Good morning, All Ranch family, and welcome to our online service. My name is Jeremiah, and I'm so glad to be hosting you this morning. Just a quick reminder, hey, if you're in the GTA area, you are more than welcome to join us in person, 10 a.m. every Sunday morning, and we would love to connect with you. So if you're in the area, come on down, come and meet our crew, our welcome team. You can meet me as well. I'll be there as well, so we would love to see you. But we do have an online service. Pastor Ken is going to be continuing the series Before You Jump. Our worship team is going to lead us in worship first. So let's give God praise. Let's worship Him. Have an amazing Sunday, and God bless.
I believe you gave sight to the blind. I believe that the dead came to life. I believe there were wonders and signs, and you're still the same. I believe every word that you said. I believe there are scars in your hands, that your goodness is good without end, and you'll never change. I will tell of your wonders, sing of your grace. The God of creation, He knows me by name. The Lord is faithful, yesterday, now, and always, always. Your mercy is mighty, age after age, and all generations will bow down and praise the Lord is faithful, yesterday, now, and always, always. I believe you will come in the clouds. I believe you are here even now. In your presence I know there is power, power to save. I will tell of your wonders, sing of your grace. The God of creation, He knows me by name. The Lord is faithful, yesterday, now, and always, always. Your mercy is mighty, age after age, and all generations will bow down and praise the Lord is faithful, yesterday, now, and always, always. You were, you are, you always will be God. You were, you are, you always will be God. Yes, you always will be God. I will tell of your wonders, sing of your grace. The God of creation, He knows me by name. The Lord is faithful, yesterday, now, and always, always. Your mercy is mighty, age after age, and all generations will bow down and praise the Lord is faithful, yesterday, now, and always, always. You were, you are, you always will be God. You were, you are, you always will be God. Yes, you always will be God. Your mercy is mighty, age after age, and all generations will bow down and praise the Lord is faithful, yesterday, now, and always.
Good morning, it's good to see you, and I hope you've had a good week so far. We've been in a series of talks called before you jump. In other words, you want to look and see where you're jumping. You want to see what's down below before you jump. Great questions to ask so that you can make better decisions. Now, just need to say again that this material is not original with me. It comes from our partner church. We are strategic partners with North Point, led by Andy Stanley. And the material comes from a book that he's written called Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets. And I would just encourage you to get the book. In fact, I would encourage you to post all 5 of these questions up around your house. And the questions we're asking, what if you could ask 5 questions that would help you to make decisions that are like 100% better than last year's decisions? Very important thing. So these are the decisions, these are the questions that you have to ask. Am I being honest with myself? Really? What story do I want to tell? What legacy do I want to leave? Is there a tension inside that demands my attention? And then, of course, the one that we're going to be talking about today is, what is the wise thing to do? In other words, the maturity question. Years ago, I met a guy who was a physician, and he wrote a book called Margin. It's a great book. His name was Richard Swenson. And the point of his book is that most people are living on overload. And he speaks from his own experience when he writes this book. And he talks about the fact he was a physician and he had a practice. He was a doctor at a hospital. He was teaching and had teenagers and just all this stuff. In his life, he was like drowning in success. It wasn't going badly. He was just drowning in success. And so he wrote this book called Margin. And it's something that I think a lot of us struggle with. In other words, having margin. Margin, if you want to define it, is like the space around the edges of any given page, whether it's a Bible page or whatever it happens to be. And it's having space in your life to breathe. Financial margin, relational margin, all these different kinds of margin. So this is how he describes it, okay? Margin is having breath left at the top of the stairs. That's a good one, isn't it? It's money left at the end of the month. Another good one. Sanity left at the end of adolescence. That one fits particularly well. Marginless is the baby crying and screaming and your cell phone ringing all at the same time. Margin is grandma watching the child for the afternoon. Marginless is being asked to carry something that is 5 pounds heavier than you can lift. Margin is having a friend who will share the load with you. Marginless is fatigue. Margin is energy. Marginless is red ink. Margin is black ink. Marginless is courage. Margin is calm. Marginless is reality. And margin is the remedy. In life, we have all different kinds of areas in our lives where we struggle with margin. And I'm telling you, one of the issues in our lives is moral margin. Like we just don't give ourselves space. And I kind of have a little drawing here to kind of show you what that looks like. You know, we all know that there's kind of this fine line between wisdom and regret. You know, what's legal, what's drunk, which is, embarrassment, which is humiliation. Nobody wants to go there. And yet the truth is that many times we will just kind of snuggle right up to the line of that with legal, or with being sober, with being responsible, without hopefully going over into the other side. The problem is what you call the battle of the bulge. We kind of push up against the edge and we're pushing on it, pushing on it, and pushing on it. And then eventually we go over. So it's kind of like the teeter-totter. Many of you played on one of these things when you were a kid, and it's kind of like standing at the top, and at some point, this thing, if you step over the line, this thing is going to go down, and you're probably going to go toppling down with it. That's what we're talking about. Now, we all know that the fine line exists, okay? We all know that, okay? The question is, if you're here, what is the wise thing to do? Well, maybe the wise thing to do is to not push up against the line, to not snuggle up to it. See, I have this theory, and that is that, if you flirt with regret, you're eventually going to date it and marry it and have kids with it, and you're going to get launched into it. It's just the way things work. A lot of this comes down to assumptions that we make, and these are flawed assumptions, And the flawed assumption, well, if it's not wrong, then it's all right, If it's not illegal, then it's okay, If it's not immoral, then it's acceptable, If it's not over the line, if it's not over this little line here, it's fine. But the problem is that often we cross that line, kind of like a toddler. If you see a toddler walking around the edge of a swimming pool, nobody ever thinks, oh, they'll be fine. They're not in the water yet. They're not drowning yet. You want to run over and you want to rescue the child because you know that the direction that they're in is not a good one. And if they play around that line, they're gonna fall. Years ago, when I was about 6, my parents went on vacation with a family called Bob and Mabel Heifer. They were the Heifer family. We had a lot of fun. They were just great, great people. They had 3 daughters. And so we were vacationing up in Buckhorn, Ontario. And I'll believe this, if you want, coming up from Pittsburgh to vacation up in Buckhorn, up in that area. So on Sundays, we went to do the only thing that it was legal to do. You couldn't do fun things like fishing or swimming, and so you went and visited things, just so you didn't have to sweat. So we went to the lift locks in Peterborough. Many of you have been there, you know what it is. So the Heifer's youngest daughter, she was about 3 years old at the time. I was about 5 or 6 at the time. We were playing on the edge of, the lift locks along the canal there and so on. And I was pushing gravel into the water, and she was imitating me like, kids do. And she's pushing gravel into the water too. Well, being a little bit of ADHD, I decided to go and do something more interesting. Left her there at the edge. I didn't know any different. Left her there on the edge and went to catch frogs or do something like that. Well, there's this whole kerfuffle there, and I find out that Jeannie fell in, like it's about 10 feet deep, and she can't swim. So she's flailing around, and as she bobs up for the second time, some guy who was scared to death of the water just kind of reached down his hand, and she kind of reached up and grabbed his hand, and he saved her life, actually. Now, I didn't fully realize, I don't think at the time, the danger of the thing, and so on. I was just kind of embarrassed that I had to give up my underwear because they were dry and hers were wet, okay? So she's alive and well, and she's doing fine and has children of her own. But you understand, playing around the edge of something that's dangerous is always dangerous. And we all get scared. You see a toddler hanging around the edge of a pool. You see somebody's pet, even if it's a cat, kind of wandering out near a highway, busy highway. The pet isn't out there on the highway yet. The toddler isn't in the pool yet. But it's dangerous, and we know that there's going to be a problem eventually if it's let to go on. And I've never heard a parent, tell their kid, their teenage kids, just go out and go as fast as it's legal just so you don't get caught, just go out and drink as much as you can. Don't worry too much about it, just keep on going, just so you don't create another one of you. Just go out and have fun. You'll be fine. Because pathways have a direction. Pathways have a direction. And they also have a destination if you stay on them long enough. Most of us would have saved ourselves a boatload of regret. Like, you lie in bed at night, and you think about the things that you did, the stupid things that you did, the things that you're still paying for. And if you would have asked the question, what is the wise thing to do? We probably could have stayed out of that. Author of the book of Proverbs, book of wisdom, he describes wisdom many times as prudence. It's not a Amish name or something like that, or somebody from the Pilgrims. Prudence is basically being able to have the foresight, being able to look ahead and see what's going to happen. And this is what he writes: a prudent person foresees danger and takes precaution. A simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. Message translates it like this. It says, a prudent person sees trouble coming and ducks. A simpleton walks right in blindly and gets clobbered. You play with a cobra enough, you're going to get bitten. You play with a pit bull long enough, you're going to get bitten by it. You play in traffic, you're likely going to get hit. That's just the way it works. And that's what makes this question, the maturity question, so brilliant. What is the wise thing to do? It's not asking, is it legal? Will anybody notice? Am I going to have fun? How close can I get to the line without getting clobbered? It's, what is the wise thing to do? What is the wise thing to do? Now, this thinking is at the very core of something Paul, one of the early church leaders, says to the Ephesian church. And this is what he says. He says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Now, most of us, as I mentioned, we have, regret. We think about it, usually late at night in the dark, and this is a time where we did something or we said something or, we drank something or slept with something. And it was a moment. Maybe it was a weekend. Maybe it was a season of life. And we think to ourselves, I wish I could go back. Because if I could go back in time, I would do things differently. Now, here's what I know about those moments. All of these moments were preceded by a series of unwise decisions. They weren't necessarily wrong decisions. They weren't necessarily illegal or even immoral decisions. But it was a series of unwise decisions that led to us crossing lines that we wish that we'd never crossed. Now, these words were written 2,000 years ago, so these are old words, and yet they sound so current, don't they? I mean, they really do, Paul, it's interesting, he was a Pharisee, so he had the Jewish scriptures, memorized, and if you asked him for a spot in Malachi, he could tell you what it was. If you asked him for a spot, or a verse out of Psalms, he could probably tell you what it was, because he had the whole thing memorized. And that's what makes it interesting, that he doesn't go back in this statement to, Bible says, thou shalt not. He doesn't go there. Instead, he bases it on being wise. He says, don't be unwise. Now, you can kind of, bring this out like this. He says, be careful. You have to be careful how you live. You have to watch out. You have to be prudent, as Proverbs says, or you're going to get clobbered. Be careful. He says, live as wise, not as unwise. He said, makes the most of every opportunity. And there's a reason. The days are evil. Don't be foolish. Understand what God's will is. And that makes sense. We go in the right direction and we make good decisions. Paul says, don't be unwise. Don't be unwise. Now, what he says here in a few crisp words is just brilliant. Notice that he says, making the most of every opportunity. And what this means in the original, basically, if you were to translate it, is redeeming the time. Some of you, if you knew, the King James Version or other versions, that's exactly what it says. So imagine that your time is being held in jail, okay? And the time that you wasted, the time that you goofed off, the time that, that when you should have been studying, the time when you should have been, with somebody you love, the time when you were kind of out there, it says redeem the times. In other words, the opportunities, you want to make sure that you don't get it in jail, and redeeming it means buy it back, maybe even buy it back before it gets there. Think about this. Imagine the time that you've wasted over the years that led to regret. Some of you, maybe spent 2 or 3 years with, Mr. Wrong or Miss Wrong or something like that, and it's like 2 years. It's regret. You lost that time when you could have been doing something else. Imagine being able to reclaim all the money. Anybody ever wasted any money? I sure have. Imagine being able to reclaim all that money. Well, if you listen to this, it basically says, make sure that you redeem the opportunity. Make sure that you buy it back. Now, why do we even have to be told that? It says, because the days are evil. Evil. Sounds so ominous, doesn't it? But it is. This is 2,000 years ago, and you just imagine how things have gone since then. What he's basically saying is don't be naive about the culture that you live in, because it's not this neutral culture where you can just do what you want and you can go out and make a bunch of bad decisions and you're just going to be fine. This is not a neutral culture. Most of us understand that. We see it in the ads on Instagram. We see it in the ads on TV, these provocative ads that are saying, come, experience, have a good time, and we are drawn into evil stuff that basically leads us down the wrong path. And the phrase, don't be foolish, is not intended as a platitude. He's not saying, be nice, play nice out there with the other kids. He's saying, wake up, throw water on your face, Watch where you're going. You're going the wrong way. Watch where you're going. And the final line here is so important. He says, understand what God's will is. Understand what God's will is, because he's laid it out pretty carefully. If you read on into the next passage, it kind of gives us, insight on what God's will is. It says, don't get drunk. Anybody, who's ever, talked to somebody and they said, yeah, I got drunk. I'm so glad I was drunk because I made such good decisions. We don't make good decisions. It says, don't be drunk, be filled with the Spirit. Allow the Spirit of God to guide your life and help you to make the wise decisions. And Paul gets even more explicit about this in another letter to the Romans, about the days being evil. Right in the very next chapter of Galatians or Ephesians here, he basically says, our battle is not against flesh and blood. Like, this isn't bad people who are out there and they're going to ruin your day. That sometimes is part of it. He says this is a whole other level of evil and pressure. So the call in this is don't play games. Wake up. Keep tuned in. What is the wise thing to do? What is the wise thing to do? Stop playing moral limbo. How low can you go? How low can you go? He said, you're going to get in trouble if you do that. Now, the problem is that sometimes people wait, when it comes to making the wise decisions, they wait until there is no other decision to make. Guy, for years, he's eating potato chips, drinking beer, all of a sudden he has to go in, has angina, has to go in for open heart bypass surgery, and the doctor says, okay, you've had your bypass surgery, now you got to eat right, now you got to lose some weight, and you've got to also get some exercise, and a person sometimes in these circumstances, before the health crisis, would say, well, I should have done that years ago. What they're saying is, I knew what to do, and I just didn't do it. That's sometimes what's going on. Wouldn't it be great to do that before it's the only option left? Now, what I want to do in closing is simply lay out a few reference points for the question, what is the wise thing to do? We do read Proverbs, and have an action for every verse there. Well, if it's not about being moral or immoral. It's not about being legal or illegal. It's just being wise instead of being unwise. And some of the reference points, and you could put them like this, is in the light of my past experience. We all have a past experience, don't we? We all have history. In the light of my past experience, my present circumstances, where I am right now relationally, and where I am emotionally, and where I am in terms of my money and everything else, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? In light of my past experience, in the light of my present circumstances, in the light of my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? Now think about your past experience. We all have one, okay? And sometimes we travel a road for a long time, and it's kind of a muddy road, and it gets ruts in it. So what this is saying is, if you're going to be in danger of falling back into the same old rut that you've been in for so long that's created a lot of your problems, then you need to stay away from the rut. It's kind of like the story, I was out for a walk, and I fell into a deep, deep hole, and it took me a long time to get out, The next day I went out for a walk, and I fell into that same deep hole, and it took me a long, long time to get out. So you don't want to ride your life on the edge of the ruts. My ruts are different than yours. There's some people that can go out, and they can have a glass of wine, they can have a beer on a hot day, and it's not going to create a whole bunch of problems. There are people, if they've got a rut in their life of alcoholism, and they take that drink, and it's likely that they're going to fall off the wagon, and they're going to get themselves in deep, deep stuff, in a deep hole, and it's going to take a long time to get out. There's lots of different things when it comes to what it is. Sometimes it's internet stuff. You just need to stay off the internet. Sometimes it's some of the devices on your phone, your apps. It can even be Amazon. It can be, Visa, your flexible friend, that has gotten you into so much trouble before. So what this is saying, given my past, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to stay out of the same traps that I've been in? And it can be workaholism. It can be alcoholism. It can be just about anything. And what you can say about this is, well, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, Jesus drank wine. It's obvious, tells us that he did, he's called a drunkard. Well, that's not the issue. The issue is your past. And if you get to a point where you need to have a glass of wine or a bottle of wine or a case of beer or whatever it is, you're going to be in trouble. So in light of your past experience, what is the wise thing to do? What is the wise thing to do professionally? What is the wise thing to do with your money? I mean, maybe you have to put barbed wire around it. Maybe you need to get rid of all your credit cards. What is the wise thing to do recreationally? There's sometimes things that we do recreationally, that are going to get us into trouble. We need to ask the question. And that's where you got to, this first question that we actually ask comes up. Am I being honest with myself? Really? It's like grabbing yourself by the scruff of the neck. You being honest with me, Ken? Well, yeah, I think I am. Are you being honest with me? Tell me the truth. You got to tell yourself the truth. The present is another one, when it comes to wise. Given my present circumstances, given where I am right now in my life, whether it's my marriage or whether it's kids or whether it's, the pressures at work or whether it's financial pressures or whatever's going on in our world. I mean, we've all had this. The present for us a number of months ago was COVID. That was your reality. So you have to ask yourself the question, what is the wise thing to do? Now we're pretty much hopefully out from under it. And we have to ask ourselves another set of questions. What is the wise thing to do? And we're in all kinds of seasons of life. Like I said, we just came out of one. There is a whole university season of life. Given the fact that I'm here, what is the wise thing to do? And I have expenses. I got to pay this thing off, Given the fact if you have young children, I have young children. That limits me. What is the wise thing to do? I've got teenagers who are watching me, watching every move I make. What is the wise thing to do? You have to kind of look through this grid and make your decisions. Being unemployed, if you're unemployed, well, that's your present situation. It should change how you think. It changes the kind of decisions that you make. If you're divorced, that sometimes changes the decisions that you make. It changes how you spend your time. It changes how you spend your money. All these different things. If you're in a season of anger, if you've just been through something horrendous in your life, and you're feeling angry, and you're feeling sad, and you're feeling miserable, then that's the season of life that you're in. Given my present circumstances, what is the wise thing to do? If you're having marriage problems, you got to ask yourself, what is the wise thing to do? You got lots of emotions. They're hurting and lonely. And I tell you, this is where I see a lot of people make a permanent decision that just locks them in sometimes into pain because they just want to solve the problem. They just want to, immediately, get rid of the pain and the loneliness and sadness and all the other stuff. And they just jump into a situation without actually even thinking, okay, is this even a good season of life to make that kind of a decision? See, I've never heard anybody say, I've been, working with people for over 40 years, I've never heard a single person say, you know what, I wish I would have jumped into a relationship, sooner. I waited too long. I wish I would have gotten married sooner. I waited too long. You want to make sure that that's the right decision. And the right question is, in the light of my present circumstances, what is the wise thing for me to do? One more reference point. These are 3 reference points, past experience, given my past experience, given my present circumstances, and then in light of my future hopes and dreams for my life, what is the wise thing to do? See, I'm guessing that you have a way that you want to turn your life to turn out. You have a story that you want to see happen in your life where you make a difference, where you go the long haul with the person that you're married to, where your kids are changed, where you have a dream that you have of wanting to make a difference in other people's lives, that you want to leave goodness and love behind you in your trail, and you want to finish well. You want to live with honor. So if that's your dream, what is the wise thing to do if that's your dream? I want you to think about the word undermine. And just in case you don't get it, I've kind of drawn a picture. You ready for this? This is just amazing, okay? We used to live in Pennsylvania, which is the land of the coal mines. I'm telling you, we lived in coal mining towns where the whole town was run by the coal mine. You see guys coming back from the mines, and their faces are all black from the coal dust and everything like that. So the deal with a mine is that you don't usually see it, okay, because it goes under the earth. And sometimes, the whole mountain is kind of honeycombed with mine. Now, they're supposed to brace these things up. But the whole issue of undermining is, you've got a house sitting up here, so you have to ask yourself, what am I digging for? Like, what am I wanting to bring out here? Because, when you mine something, it means that you're trying to bring something valuable out of the earth, and make some money off of it. So if you undermine what you're living in, the house that you're living in, your future, it means that you're digging under it, and the whole thing's going to crack. and it's going to fall apart. You don't want to undermine your life. Now, let me give you some tangible situations. Let's say you have a dream of growing old, as I mentioned, with the person that you're married to. Well, that has implications for wisdom, for making wise decisions. It has implications for, what you watch and what you do and how much you work and how much you don't work and the kind of things that you say and the things that you say to them, insulting, and things. This undermines what you want for your life. With teens and young adults, you know as well as I do, it's possible to make decisions in these next years that could totally undermine the reason you're even in university. You go out and you party and you have fun with all your friends and so on. So what if you fail your exam and you lose the plot in terms of why you're even there? I could go on, okay, but I'm not going to. And I can hear the chap clapping and cheering out there. But I'm guessing that you have a dream for your life. You have a story that you'd like to write with the decisions that you make. You have a story that you would like your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids to tell about your life and what you were like. So when you look ahead for your future, for your dreams and your hopes, you need to think about that and make decisions that are wise. And I just have one thing, I go in this all the time and so on. What you're going to need is you're going to need a good shepherd. Good shepherd who knows what you need and what you don't need. A shepherd who's going to come looking for you if you lose your way. A shepherd who can help you to find the right direction. A shepherd who's going to walk with you through the dark times so you don't do something stupid. A shepherd who knows the future and can actually guide you there. A shepherd who wants to bless your life and anoint you and allow that to pour all over the people around you, so that it continues with you. But you see, you've got to choose. He's willing to shepherd you. He will guide your life. But you have to choose him so that he can guide your way and help you to make good decisions. Given your hopes and dreams for the future, what is the wise thing to do? I guarantee you one thing, you have a relational future. We all do. Relational future. Nobody, thinks, I'd just kind of like to be left alone, But we have to think about that. We have to think about that. The temptation is always, to goof off and to just do the things that we feel like doing. And many times we miss the opportunity to build the relational world that we really want to live in. So these are the excuses that sometimes we do for doing stuff that's shady, some stuff that's just kind of pushing this fine line, to see how far we can get with it. Well, I'm not doing anything wrong, and my friends do it all the time, and it's not immoral, and I can handle it, and there's no law against it. And then, of course, the final, coup de grace on the excuses is, well, God will forgive me, and these are mostly true. These are mostly true. But they need to be completely true if you're going to be able to be wise, given my past, given my present circumstances, given what I dream and hope for the future. What is the wise thing to do? What is the wise thing to do? A woman by the name of Anna Nalick, she's written a song, and it's called Breathe. And in this song, she has these lyrics, and she said, life is like an hourglass that's glued to the table, and no one can find the rewind button. That's true, isn't it? That's what life is like. Life is like an hourglass glued to the table. You get one shot at it. No one can find the rewind button because there's none there. We used to play a game growing up. It was simply called dice. And the way it worked is that you had 5 dice, and you would roll them and see what you would get. And a 1 was worth 100, and a 5 was worth 50, and so on. And if you got 3 of the same number, like 3, it was worth 300, but you had to get it all at the same time. Now, the point is that you would start out, and you would roll, and then, okay, in that one, I got nothing. But you have to be able, if you go on, if you keep on rolling, once you've gotten some points, and you miss, then you lose all those points. I had a friend when I worked security at this nuclear power plant, Nick, and he loved this game. He liked to gamble and so on, and I guess he used to, think that there were certain things that brought good luck. For example, he would roll the dice, and then as it was falling onto the table, he would go, zzz, and of course hoping that, he would get some good luck. I used to do that as a dad, I know I'm a defective dad, but I used to do that to mess with my kids' heads, when we would play, and I would go zzz, like that, to mess with them. Here's the deal. You have a life. You don't want to gamble with your life because it is so easy to lose. And you roll the dice enough, I'm guarantee you that you're going to lose. Your life is so important. You've got one shot at it, and you want to make really, really wise decisions. In the light of my past experience, in the light of my present circumstances, in the light of my future that I hope and dream for, what is the wise thing to do? Half-brother of Jesus, James, wrote this in his book. He says, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you, and he will not rebuke you for asking. That's good news. Let's pray. God, I pray that instead of just asking the normal questions that we ask about whether we're going to get caught or whether anybody will know, when we're trying to push that fine line between total embarrassment and bankruptcy and embarrassment and all the other things that we are afraid of, I pray that you will help us to ask the question, what is the wise thing to do? Help us to do that, and help us to find your direction as we move forward in life. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. I would urge you to put these questions someplace in your house where you can see them and where your kids can see them, and maybe read them to them before they go to bed at night. Am I being honest with myself, really? What's the story that I want to tell? Is there a tension in me that demands my attention? What is the wise thing to do? And then, of course, the question next week, what would love have me do? So, may God go with you, give you wisdom, and I'll see you then.